The first thing my teacher taught me, and you have to realize, I go to this lecture and here comes a retired Green Beret. And this guy is like got the short military haircut, looks like the most conservative person, like just a squared away soldier. His whole bearing was military. But he was the most spiritually far out guy you'd ever meet. And the first thing he said was, I'll give you the secret of the universe. Is the secret of the universe is communication, because everything communicates all the time. And he didn't tell us this at that point, but later we got into it, is that it is electromagnetic. We live in an electromagnetic universe where there is energy waveforms that are electromagnetic in nature. Consciousness is a dimension, it's a field. So we have a greater field of consciousness in this universe. And within that field of consciousness are lesser fields of consciousness. Joe McMoneagle called them bubbles. Like Sage, you and I right now are communicating. So we have a loop of consciousness. When you just asked me, you mentioned Hawaii, and I knew that you were going to ask, is Hawaii a magical place to remote view? Like I was formulating that answer before you even put that up, because you and I, our consciousness, they're overlapping.
Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Yeah.
Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Praise the Sun podcast, where I'm honored to have on my guest, Dick Allgire. How are you doing, Dick?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day in Hawaii. I love Hawaii. Where are you located?
I'm basically in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago. So not quite as nice, but I hope to one day be able to go out to Hawaii and visit and yeah.
You should come out. Here's the deal. If you find me on the beach, I take you to lunch. So, and
Oh,
I'll tell you which beach I'm at and at what time. You just come by the beach and
I will be there. I will be there.
you come out. We'll do a segment from Hawaii on the beach.
Absolutely. I love the topic of remote viewing for as long as I even knew about it. So it's something I could talk about all day long, and the questions just come to me naturally. So yeah, I would love that.
Remote
Um,
viewing is the most interesting thing I've ever encountered in my life. And I've had a pretty interesting life, but it just is so fascinating. It
Absolutely.
it has I have proven to myself without any doubt that human beings have a subconscious awareness that exists in a greater consciousness field where all information is available. And I'm sure you've had moments of what we call non-local awareness. Like you've had a moment, Sage, where you knew something, or you had a
Yeah.
premonition, or you thought
Yep.
about a dear friend who you haven't seen in 5 years, and then they call you. And everybody listening has had that, and you don't know quite how to do. Like, how did that happen? You just can't categorize it, and it's just one of those little anomalies. But remote viewing has allowed me to understand how that works. So.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fascinating concept, and the more I learn about it, the more I understand how it's intertwined and connected with so many different other. Um, what would you call remote viewing? Is it a psychic ability? Is it
It,
uh,
it's akin to a psychic ability. Our definition of remote viewing is that it is a natural communication skill. The goal
right?
of remote viewing is to establish and maintain a communication pathway between the conscious mind and the subconscious awareness so that you can on demand have moments of non-local awareness. So if you take a psychic is naturally wired to have this communication happen. A remote viewer is someone, the US military figured out that all people can do this, and there are ways to establish a query and response so that you can learn how to listen to that little subconscious awareness that you have. So
Mm,
it's a natural thing. It is pretty similar to what psychics do, but you learn to do it on demand. So,
mm,
yeah, that's the
okay.
best explanation I've come up with for it.
It's a good one. It's a good one. So, for our audience who are not familiar with you and your background, could you briefly explain how you got into the world of remote viewing, or actually, what was your life like before all of this, before the remote viewing? And
Well, I had had a couple of moments where I had little psychic events or little consciousness events where I knew something. For example, I had a girlfriend that I was in love with in high school, and there was a parent teacher conference where we had a couple days off. So, like, school was off Thursday and Friday, or off on Wednesday or something. So that I said the night before, like, let's go to a movie, let's do something. And she said, oh, I got to go see my grandmother. I can't do it. And that night I had a dream where I saw her in my dream with this guy that I knew from another situation. I didn't think anything of it. And when I saw her the next time, I said, yeah, I dreamt about you. I saw you with this guy, Steve. And she said, why did you tell me that? I said, because I had this dream. It was just a funny little dream. She said, are you accusing me of something? But I hadn't. She said, I was with him. And I went, oh, why did I dream about that? So I had these little moments. I was I was working my life before remote viewing. I was a TV newscaster. I was a mainstream television guy, local news, go out and cover the big house fire, go cover the governor doing a groundbreaking, what the legislature was doing, city council approving the new sewer tax, all those type of things. Spot news, local news. I was a mainstream anchor man, like good evening, Dick Allgire, Channel 4 News. And I used to go to the station in Hawaii. I lived on the other side of the island, so I had to drive over it's called the Poly Highway or the Leke Highway. There's two roads over the mountain through the tropical forest. And on the way to work in the afternoon, I would listen to news radio. And so this was before the internet. I had to know what was happening in world news. So I'd be listening to the news summaries. And going home at night at 11 o'clock at night, there was a radio show called the Art Bell Show, Coast to Coast with Art Bell, and on weekends, Dreamland. And I heard him do a segment on remote viewing. And he interviewed some of the military remote viewers. And I thought, if that's true, that's amazing. I got to learn about that. So I bought books. I watched documentaries. I consumed everything I could find about remote viewing. And that led me to somebody sent me an email saying there's this former military remote viewer who's giving a lecture this Friday night at a facility. It's free if you want to come. So I went, and my mentor, Glenn Wheaton, who was a remote viewer for U.S. Army Special Forces Intelligence, came out, showed his military ID card. You could just tell from his bearing he was like full on military, and he'd been in Special Forces, and he was a remote viewer for U.S. Army Special Forces Intelligence, and they developed their own method of remote viewing. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to teach this, but I won't accept any money for it. I can't. I don't want money involved. So we're going to rent a place, set up some tables. You guys pay $25 a month for the paper and the pens and the rental of a place, and I'll teach you." So he came out and gave us courses, and that's how I learned remote viewing. Kind of a long-winded story, but I was a reporter and met this military guy, trained with him for over 20 years.
wow, I always love hearing about coast to coast because it's something that I occasionally would hear about on YouTube when I was growing up. I would hear like sometimes there would be like random guests who have like these crazy
Oh yeah. Well,
stories.
you can get archives of that, and it's really interesting. But let me take you back to the time before there was YouTube, right? Before everybody had a channel,
Yeah.
before you could go find anything on your smartphone. It was, you listened on the radio, and it would be like Art Bell came on in the dark of night. So you'd be sitting home at night with the radio on. It goes, from the kingdom of Nye, this is Dreamland with Art Bell. And he had this really rich, low voice. And he would have like Whitley Strieber talking about abductions and consciousness and weird, just all the weirdest stuff out to the boundaries of reality. And it was, I used to stay up late because I'm in Hawaii. So it was earlier in the night. It would start at like, I think 7:30 or 8, but I'd record that and listen to it. And I was devoted to Art Bell. That was like, that was, and yeah, that was a phenomena. That was really something back in the early 90s, Art Bell. Yeah.
So you've been in Hawaii your whole life?
No, I grew up in Detroit. I grew up
Oh,
no,
okay.
like you. I was Birmingham, Michigan, and then I moved to Salt Lake City. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And you want to
Oh,
talk about 1960s and 70s, the all white, like no cultural diversity at all. Salt Lake City was all white people. Like,
wow.
yeah. And I came to Hawaii as a visitor in 1985, and it was during a bad winter. And I got off the plane and I looked at the palm trees in the sun and I went, oh my God, the world is in color. The world is like, it's not just gray and white. Like the sun is here. And I said, I'm not going home. And I almost just canceled my flight, but I went home. I made some videotapes of me on TV. I thought, I'm young enough. If I pull this off, this will be amazing. If I don't pull it off, I'll just go back home. So I brought videotapes and I gave them to all the news stations. I took them and dropped them off. And I went to the beach. And one day I got back from the beach and there was a note on my door. I didn't even have a phone. I left the neighbor's phone number. The neighbor put a note that said, Paul Udell of KITV called for you. Oh man. I called him up. He said, yeah, can you come in tomorrow? And I went in and he said, I need to have you read, like put you on camera and have you read a script. And I'd been doing that for years. So they gave me the script. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dick Allgire in the news. And he went, that's enough. That's all right. You can start work tomorrow. So I got a job in TV in Hawaii, and I'm looking around going, I can't believe I'm actually working here. They're paying me to be here. So I've lived here since '85, and the
Wow.
best part about Hawaii was learning a new culture, getting to know, because Hawaii really is not exactly part of the United States. It kind of
Hmm.
is in name only. It's half Asian. My wife is
Mm,
Korean, so you're meeting Korean people, Filipino, Japanese, Chinese, Thai. It like you talk about a melting pot. I went out on a story one day with a California surfer. My cameraman was this blonde dude from California, and I'm this haole, which is the term for white guys. And there's these native Hawaiians, and they're doing this like uh, native a sovereignty thing where they're
hmm.
like, you took our kingdom, and people don't know the real story of Hawaii. Like America went in and stole the place. they
Yeah.
they just they put the queen in jail and they stole it. And like we learned in school that like, okay, Hawaii was the 50th state in 1959 and we're all happy, and the Hawaiians were still a little bitter about having their kingdom stolen. So they were doing this sovereignty thing, and I go up there as I'm the reporter, and I go walking up. Yeah, I need to get an interview with you. And me and the blonde cameraman, they just looked at us like this. They went. They turned their back on us and they walked away. And I was just,
Mm.
blah, 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 but I'm with the news, and they just gave me the cold shoulder. So I realized I'm not in Utah anymore. I'm not. I'm a minority. So it was
Right.
a real lesson to me. So
Mm.
but it's a place. It has, they call it aloha. They have aloha. Everybody gets along. Everybody is allowed to have their own culture, and we mingle cultures, and it's just the most beautiful place. You really got to come out, Sage.
Oh, it's on my list. I really want
We'll
to.
talk about remote viewing. I'll take you to dinner. That's a standing offer.
I promise you, I will take you up on it. Speaking of Hawaii and the connection with remote viewing, do you think that there is any type of intrinsic, like
Yeah,
locational ability, like ley line wise, that
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
helps?
Hawaii. Okay, a number of reasons. Okay, one reason is Hawaii is the most remote spot on Earth. It is the most isolated location. So I'm on this little island called Oahu, and if I go 15 miles that way, I hit ocean, and if I go 20 miles that way, I hit ocean. If I can go maybe 38 miles that way, I hit ocean. So we're surrounded by ocean. We are totally remote, and that makes it a quiet place for remote viewing because noise is the enemy of remote viewing. When you get a lot of electromagnetic noise, a lot of uh, people in one spot, the quieter the better. It is also a I'm I'm not basing this statement on any scientific knowledge that I have, but it's my feeling that because of the ley lines, Hawaii is a magical spot. It's a protected spot. It is a very spiritual spot. When you get to know the native Hawaiians and their practices, this is just a really special place. So yeah, it is good for remote viewing. Yeah, that was a good question. I knew what you were asking when you started it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't help but ask because I know that there's different locations around the globe that have these like energetic ley line um, centers, you know,
Go
and
to Haleakala on Maui. That's the extinct volcano. Go up to the top of that and just get quiet and feel what you feel. Yeah, yeah.
wow, wow. So breaking down the, I guess, scientific aspect of it, how is viewing is even possible? Like, what is remote viewing?
Science has yet to answer that, and no one has can really define it accurately. My feeling, what I was taught by the first thing my teacher taught me, and you have to realize I go to this lecture and here comes a retired Green Beret, and this guy is like got the short military haircut. He is looks like the most conservative person, like just a squared away soldier. His whole bearing was military, but he was the most spiritually far out guy you'd ever meet. And the first thing he said was, "I'll give you the secret of the universe." Wow. He says the secret of the universe is communication because everything communicates all the time. And he didn't tell us this at that point, but later we got into it, is that it is electromagnetic. We live in an electromagnetic universe where there is energy waveforms that are electromagnetic in nature. And it is consciousness is a dimension, it's a field. So we have a greater field of consciousness in this universe. And within that field of consciousness are lesser fields of consciousness. Joe McMoneagle called them bubbles. Like Sage, you and I right now are communicating. So we have a loop of consciousness. When you just asked me, you mentioned Hawaii, and I knew that you were going to ask, is Hawaii a magical place to remote view? Like I was formulating that answer before you even put that up, because you and I, our consciousness they're overlapping. When you are in a group setting, if you go to a really good concert, you make a closed local loop of consciousness where you're all on the same like wavelength and you're having the same experience, and it reinforces and it amplifies that. That's why you like to go to a good concert. Um, so your city has a closed local loop of consciousness, your country has a closed local loop of consciousness, And we all reside within the greater field of consciousness that is our universe. And the way remote viewing works is non-local transmission of electromagnetic frequency. And I'm not a physicist, so I'm not speaking authoritatively. This is my belief. I'm just an old retired newscaster, but uh, the what we're made of is uh, atoms that were formed in a star. So the star explodes, expands, and is recycled, and then our consciousness is put into this physical form. And so if you look at quantum theory, electrons across the universe are somehow tied together. So our consciousness is tied in to that greater field. We're here in this earth suit, in this body, to have an experience in a three-dimensional reality. So we have parabolic hearing, we have stereoscopic eyes, we have sense of touch and smell. All our physical senses are put into this brain, and the brain has a filtering system, because you couldn't have this experience if you knew all things that were happening all at once in the universe. It would be a little overwhelming. Remote viewing teaches you how to set aside your physical sensations and just for an instant go into that greater field and have a duplicity of awareness. So for an instant, I can see what happened at an event 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. Am I explaining this adequately to you?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'm understanding it completely. I mean, this whole world isn't so new to me. I've done tons of research on it,
Yeah.
have experiences myself. So
How
I
did you get involved in all this? Like, how did you become so far out and knowledgeable about what was your journey?
Well, I would say that I kind of had my sort of what they call spiritual awakening in 2015 after serving some years in the military. I went into the military right after high school.
Oh, so you were in the military.
I was in the military. Yes, I was in the U.S. Army.
Oh, well, you got to come meet my mentor then. He would thank you for your service, and he would you'd get along well with him.
Yeah,
We'll have dinner with him.
yeah, I love to. I think you. I think it was a few people that you had were veterans, right, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So went to military right after high school and was struggling with some accumulated trauma, which is pretty standard for veterans. And I got into meditation, and I went from not being able to sit in a room by myself and just relax to just being okay, and I guess I kind of had like a what was called at that time a kundalini kind of thing, where originally when I would sit down, it would just be pitch black, and then after meditating for so long, it was like a blue aura that started to come, and I
Hmm.
would see this blue flame that would come, and freaked me out a little bit originally, but then I was like, oh well, let's keep going with this because
Watch the video back, because when you talked about that, your coloring just changed. That blue aura just appeared on your video.
oh wow,
Watch the recording.
nice.
See if your hue doesn't. It just shifted subtly.
Oh wow.
Okay, so you have this experience and you see the blue light.
I see the blue light, and then I just start to get in tune with things, and start to have like precognitive awareness of certain things happening. And I would say the most significant thing that ever happened was that I was getting an MRI. I was laying down. My audience have heard this story. I was getting an MRI, laying down, and the blue flame appeared in my awareness. And it was really unusual because I'm like, I'm not meditating. I'm pretty relaxed, but I'm like, okay. And then I heard this intuitive voice said, you need to check on your friend Miles. He just got into a fight with his brother. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay, that's oddly specific, but I'm like, okay, let's go with it. I'm like, I like this because this is so specific that if it was nonsense, I can just easily
Yeah.
throw it out. I get out of there. I can't remember if I texted or I called Miles or something like that. I'm like, hey, are you good? And he was like, no, I just got into a fight with my brother. He spit in my face. I was like, what? I was like, what? I was like, no, you're joking, right? He's like, no, yeah, because his brother had a drug problem, so they, yeah. I was like, dude, that's crazy. And I was like, I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. I didn't have a mentor or guidance at the time. I was like, well, that was pretty cool, but I had no control over it. So that was probably one of the many mystical experiences that
That,
I've had.
that's a beautiful story. I really like that story.
Yeah, yeah. It really it was really something. And then it got me talking to my mother, and I learned that my mother, when she was younger, she was a for the church. She was what they call, because we're Nigerian, it's called woli, which is prophet. And she would give different. She would go into this trance and start giving these prophecies. And one of the prophecies was that another church was about to burn down, and it did. And like everybody was like what? Like they were
Yeah.
so taken back, you know, because that's such a specific thing to say. But the church burned down. So you know, I was like, okay, well, there's clearly some type of lineage here, some type of genetic lineage here that like my mom
Yeah,
does it.
there is. Yeah, you got the genes for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there that
Have you
was
had remote viewing training? Have you done any
the
actual?
the closest thing that I ever did was when I was watching your interview with on Journey to the New Earth with
Oh, and
I think
I gave a
Kimberly.
target idea.
Yeah, I end up drawing. So what I saw was a duck, and I end up drawing a duck, and then I saw like a arch. Like I saw first I saw a duck, and then the very first thing I saw was an arch. But I was like, I'm probably thinking of the sun. That was the very first thing I saw was an arch. I'm like, I'm probably thinking of the sun because like my background is praise the sun. I'm like, I'm probably thinking about the sun. And then I saw a duck. It was a duck like really strongly, and I like just drew a duck. So I drew it, and I was like, I don't know, but the arch was. I could definitely see how it could have been the Eiffel Tower.
Well, yeah, because the and I as I gave the feedback, because the bottom part of the Eiffel Tower is that arch.
Yeah,
And so that's the way remote viewing works when you're learning it. It's the first thing that flashes in really quick, and
yeah,
then your imagination comes in.
comes
So
in.
you've got to learn to just accept the first thing and ignore the other thing. Well, we need to get you some training. We need to
Yeah,
get you in.
I I love that. I think it would be a really interesting
I think
thing.
you'd be good. You'd be good.
I think it'd be an interesting share for the thing to share on the channel as well because I have no experience with it, and I think people might find it interesting of someone who goes complete novice to I don't know where I could end up, but I think it might be something that's interesting. I like that what you said about the instant thing because the only other experience I have with that is I used to do past life regressions for people, and I was at a hypnosis conference, and um, one of the people that I'm really fond of, her name is Shelly Stockwell Nicholas. She does channeling, and during that event, she had all of us kind of. She was trying to connect us with our guides,
Mhm.
and she was like, she did the rapid thing. She was just like, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to give me the first immediate thing that comes into your mind, and it was like
Mhm.
go. And then she was like, I think she was like, what's his name? And I was like, Michael. And I was like, don't know where that came from. And then I guess it turned into Archangel Michael because first she was asking about what the different like characteristics of it. So I was like, she was like, are they short or tall? I said tall. And I was like, do they have wings? I was like, has wings. And I was like seeing this big blue figure. And then I was like, what's the name? I was like, Michael. And I've never done research on Archangel Michael or anything. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going with it. I guess that's a guide for me. So
Oh, you just
got something that
froze.
up. You're
Okay.
frozen. Okay, you're
So
back.
you're back. Okay. So let me tell you, let me paint a picture for you of how I learned this. The My guy, the military guy, we'd go into this classroom, and they have tables set up like card tables, not well, long tables, like two people, like there'd be 16 of us in a room, and there would be a stack of paper like this, fanfold computer paper on the desk with a pen on it, just a certain way like this, very straight and totally clean. And part of the protocol was how your pen was set and how the page was neat. And he taught us, he said, there's a place you're going to use that's called Blackboard. And it's if you close your eyes and about the distance you would read, maybe 18 inches up at a 60-degree angle. And he'd say, close your eyes and see the blackness there. And that you make like a screen called Blackboard. So he teaches about that. And then he would say, I'll know you're ready when I have your attention. God, he's like the drill sergeant. You're like, pay attention. Like when you're quiet and you're giving me your full attention, he'd go, okay, we'll begin. Pick up your pen. On a clean sheet of paper in the upper left-hand corner, write the word ideogram. Sliding over to the upper right-hand corner, write the word page 1 colon. Directly below page 1 colon, write your name followed by a colon. Directly below your name colon, draw a line across the page, edge to edge from right to left, which is backwards, And then he'd say, in that space above the line in the center of the page, write the following target ID, A1, B2, C3, D4. Take a moment to be familiar with that target ID, memorize it, and realize that this is your target, A1, B2, C3, D4. Dropping below the line, write the target ID again, A1, B2, C3, D4. Okay, when I say go, you're going to close your eyes, look on Blackboard for 1.5 seconds, and see visual imagery of the target. Ready, go. Stop. Render. We go, like, what? And he go, render a graphic representation. Anything you encounter on a Blackboard, right? Stop. Rip off the page, and then he'd go through it again. Page 2, and he'd go, write the target ID. He'd have us project the target ID one letter at a time. A1, B2, C3, D4. Open our eyes. Ready? Go. Stop. And we're like, well, I don't see anything in 1 second. But you train yourself
Mm-hmm.
or you do it. And then it goes from there, like you probe for smells, tastes, and then you assemble it into a picture, and then you get more detailed. And it's just brilliant how it goes step by step. And over the course, you go from not knowing anything about the target and the daunting task, the overwhelming task, like I'm going to give a report on this target with, all this data, and how am I going to get this? You don't have to think about it. You just pick up your pen, you write the word ideogram, page 1, you look for 1 second, draw whatever you see, set it aside, keep going. And an hour later, you have all this detail about the target. It's like,
Was that target a car?
that target is A1, B2 is just, it's nonsensical. It
Mm.
would be, but I'll give you this. I often say to people, there's a neurolinguistic programming aspect where I say, when you remember something like visually, your eyes go up and to the left. If you remember something emotionally, your eyes go down. So I would say, and I use this example often, remember the color of your first car. Your eyes will go up. Like mine was a red Volkswagen. I remember that. My eyes go that way. And we employ that well, I don't want to give the training methodology here, but it's really interesting. And these military guys that figured this out in special forces were really smart and really far out. I mean, they were like into the farther realms of consciousness for the U.S.
Wow.
military.
Who
They were doing outright like magic, like really wizardry stuff.
and who trained them?
I'll tell you the story of my guy. He was at Augsburg, Germany in late 70s at the Army Security Agency listening post. He was an electronic warfare guy where he listened to Morse code from behind the Iron Curtain. So he's sitting there in a station at this secret base run by the Army Security Agency, and they're tapping into the Russians' Morse code transmissions, and his job was to write the transmission. And he was doing that on the overnight shift, like from midnight to 7 or 11 to 7. It was like all night, dark of night, listening to these tones on headset, dee, 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 dee. And one day he had been to Oktoberfest in Germany, had some good beer, ate some good food, drank some beer, and didn't take a nap before work. So he went to work after drinking all day and was a little bit tired. And he was listening to the tones, and the guy in Vladivostok didn't copy the message because he wasn't very good at Morse code. And Glenn had already copied it, and he goes, this guy is so bad. They were resending the message, and he closed his eyes and he drifted off, and something about the tones put him in a altered state where he all of a sudden fell asleep. And in that moment when he was falling asleep, he saw the Russian in his uniform tapping on the Morse code key. And his supervisor woke him up, because you can't fall asleep in the military. That's the number one rule. Don't fall asleep on your post. And he said, "Sir, I saw the Russian." And they said, "What?" And he realized, I shouldn't have said that. He said, "I saw the Russian." And they said, "Give me your badge. You're relieved. Go." Turns out they were looking for people who had had this experience. And that was the genesis of remote viewing, was giving people tones in their head and seeing if they could see who was getting the tones. Then you ask who taught him. They were developing this skill, and there was research going on at Stanford Research Institute and other think tanks and other places in the military that have been classified or not classified. And the special forces guys, they went and scoured all the psychics they could find, and they found this psychic in Honolulu, Hawaii, named Dr. Richard Ireland, who would give readings. And they tested him. They took him to Schofield, the army base up at Schofield Barracks, and took him to this place at Kunia, and they tested him. They put a blindfold on him. They plaster Paris shut the corners of his eyes so he couldn't see. And they had him see stuff. Like, they'd hold something up across the room and he would describe it. So they developed their own method of doing this based on testing psychics. It's a really interesting story. It's a story that hasn't been told yet. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, if that's where they were back then, like, what's the
Where are they
evolution?
now? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the evolution of remote viewing? Like, what?
Okay. The official story, Sage, is that the CIA tested remote viewing, and there was one unit that was Fort Meade. It was the Stargate unit. It was the Grill Flame. It had a couple of names. And it was the methodology derived by Ingo Swann, and it was Joe McMoneagle and Lynn Buchanan and Mel Riley and Paul Smith and a few others named and unnamed. And in 1995, they disclosed this. They said, "Well, we were trying this psychic stuff, this thing called remote viewing. We put $20 million into it, and it had some limited success, but it really didn't work, and so we abandoned it, and so we're not using it anymore." That was the cover story.
Yeah.
If every branch of the military uses remote viewers. My guy that taught me retired in 1992. And so he doesn't have access to any classified information, but he says, to his knowledge, uh, the people he talked to, they were still using it as late as 2000. And I met a woman who was a scientist who did brainwave. Uh, what was it? She was like a neuropsychologist who did brainwave stuff. And I talked to her. I said, "I need to have something that will put me in a theta with more theta brainwaves going to help me with something called remote viewing." And she said, "Oh, my son is an Army Ranger and they use that." And I've talked to people that were Navy SEALs. "Oh yeah, the SEALs, they use remote viewers." So it's still being used, and what they're able to do, that's the question that I asked my teacher over and over again. Like, is there a electromagnetic augmentation? Is there some way to enhance people's ability? Are there tones that you could let them listen to? Are there some altered state you can induce? And he would always change the subject and go, "Hey, did you see the Patriots playing today? Brady did pretty good." I'd ask him, and he just wouldn't. I think it's so classified they don't talk about it.
Wow.
But he did tell us one time we were working a target, and he said, "Wow, you guys are really good. And what's amazing is you do this all on your own without any help." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Dick, you're plowing a field with a spoon or a fork." And he goes, "You could be using a tractor." I said, "Well, tell me how." He goes, "I can't. I'd get in trouble. You'd get in trouble." So that's the kind of holy grail. Like have you heard of the Monroe Hemisync, Robert Monroe
Yes.
Institute and Hemisync? I've dabbled with those, and I've done some like kind of out of body stuff, but apparently that doesn't really enhance remote viewing as well as other things. Um, yeah, I'd like to get together with someone that can you alter a person's consciousness with electromagnetic frequencies, like tones. There's
Mm.
one that I use when I remote view called, and it's way out of date. It was like this would have been 1999. It was called uh, Atlantean Tones, and it's this CD that I bought, and it starts out with like this organ music, and then an ocean sound like, and a heartbeat like thump 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 thump, and then organ, and there's this underlying like this irritating tone, and it takes you through like heartbeat, ocean sounds, and then it all of a sudden it's just this weird little irritating sound. But when I listen to that, I go right out. So I use that, and all your listeners are going to go, "Hey, where can I get that thing that Dick Allgire mentioned?" And I don't know if you can still find it's like Atlantean Sounds. If you can ever find that CD, it's out of print. But you can look up on YouTube. Just look up theta brainwave tones.
Hmm.
There are a number of things that you can listen to that where you want to be is that just before you fall asleep, you know. And the method that I use for remote viewing starts out in a very alert, conscious state, like it's called, you have a predominance of beta brain waves. So that's you and I talking, that's you interacting, that's you being fully awake, fully engaged. And in that state, if I ask you about the target, your target contact is that long. It's like, can you remember what a banana smells like or tastes like? Or if you're standing at the checkout of the supermarket and you look at the candy, like, can you look at a Mounds bar and can you taste what a Mounds bar tastes like? A dark chocolate and coconut for just an instant, but you can't hold it. Or a Kit Kat bar. What does a Kit Kat bar taste like? When you're fully awake, conscious in beta state, your your remote viewing contact with the signal line is that much. We progress to a state when we're working the session where about 30 minutes in, you get engaged with it and you're getting more alpha waves, which are daydreaming. Like when you're reading a book and you're not quite aware of turning the pages, you're engrossed in the story. And then we get to a point in our session where you've worked for about an hour and your brain is tired, and we do a little breathing exercise, and then you try to run theta brainwaves, which is that moment when you're still awake but you're kind of asleep, when you drift off when you're watching the TV and you hear it in the background and you start having a dream that incorporates that. That's the ideal place to be in remote viewing. Man, I can talk all day about this stuff. It's
Me
just so
too.
interesting. Yeah.
So what's the dream frequency? Is that gamma?
Theta, theta.
Oh, Theta's the dream one.
Well, okay, it's I don't want to misrepresent this. Um, it's a continuum. So
Right.
there's not a place where you're pure theta. Uh, you can be when we remote view, we call it it's an inclined orbit at theta. So the remote viewer, when we're monitored, you're like drifting off and you go to predominantly theta and you have this experience where the visuals will start and you get information. And then your monitor will ask you a question about that. And the act of hearing the question and answering it brings you back up into a different brain, a more alert. So it's beta is consciousness. If beta is fully aware conscious, alpha is daydreaming, theta is that little place between sleep and wake. Delta is full of sleep. So yeah,
Okay.
and I'm not an expert on this, but I apply it in my remote view. I've learned a little bit about it in remote viewing.
And so people who go into like a trance state with that would be considered theta as well.
I think, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I always find it interesting the people who go into that deep sleep, but they're sleep talkers. So I always
yeah.
wonder if there's like some type of information to gain from people who go in real deep, but they're somehow able to still communicate. But, huh. So
Well,
what?
ideally, what I want to do, what I'd like to build, and I'm told that the special forces remote viewers had this. You make a chamber. Hang on one second. Sorry, I had to cough. they they had a chamber, so they made this little room with all rounded on the inside. There's no square edges. They painted it black. They took white out and they made little stars, like little points of white, and then they put a black light in it. So when you were in it, you were in this edgeless, like space, like a planetarium kind of thing. They made it a Faraday cage, so it would block off electromagnetic noise. They soundproofed it and they put white noise through it, like so you'd be in there in this totally enclosed, air conditioned space where you couldn't see the edges, and that's where they would remote view in a Faraday cage, and they would have a monitor which would be a really uh, pleasant voice going, "In your work, you described a man. Go look at the man now."
Wow. What are the what are the significances of the numbers that we get
Oh, okay.
the coordinates?
Yeah, I'll tell you the history of that. If I want you to remote view Disneyland, I can't say to you, "Hey, target's Disneyland," because you're going to think Cinderella, the Enchanted Castle, Space Mountain. It has to be done under blind protocol. You have to have a moment as a remote viewer where you're open to anything, where you have no preconceived knowledge of the target. And so you have to give the viewer something to latch onto that focuses their awareness and lets you have administrative control. Like, how do you refer to the target? So they decided to give it numbers or letters. And the history of that was in the early research into remote viewing, they would give them geographical coordinates. Like they'd say, all right, go see a cave in Kazakhstan or something. And they'd look it up on the map and they'd go, well, this is 31.27 degrees north, um, latitude, uh, or a longitude, 4736 latitude. They give latitude and longitude numbers. And that was how they targeted geographical coordinates. And some of the skeptics said, well, maybe these remote viewers are really smart and they can tell by the longitude and latitude where this is. And then they realized that if they just generated a random number like 0847 2139 and you set your intent for that to be the target, that would work. So that was a good way to keep the blind protocol. They'd say, well, we're going to remote view, the Soviet base in outside of Vladivostok. So they'd get a computer to generate random numbers, 8736-4295, 8736-4295. They give that to the viewer, and that's what the viewer would identify the target as. It takes human intent and human consciousness to make a connection between the secret base in Vladivostok and 8842-3796. But now we use a combination of letters and numbers, so it's randomly generated. We have somebody called a targeteer that will select the target. And let me show you my latest one. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Okay, let me get this. I just debriefed this yesterday. All I was told was A6J0-N9SA. I wasn't told anything about it. And what I got from that, Klaus Schwab, and that was the target.
Wow.
And we got some really interesting data about Klaus Schwab. And now I'll do my promo with your permission.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Futureforecastinggroup.com, where we look at future events. We look at interesting people like Klaus Schwab. What, Charles Schwab? That's the financial guy. Klaus Schwab. We do cryptocurrencies. We use remote viewing for all kinds of interesting things. And a lot of the stuff we can't talk about in private. So we have a private site called futureforecastinggroup.com. And my YouTube channel is Future Forecasting Group. And you can see me talking about cryptocurrencies, remote viewing, world events, all kinds of interesting topics. So there you go.
Awesome. So, what's the historical accuracy of people remote viewing things like the stock market and cryptocurrency and stuff like that?
Stock market and cryptocurrency is really difficult. That is not a good application. We tried doing price points on cryptos, and that's really tough because numbers, your subconscious doesn't use numbers. Your subconscious is more sensory stuff. What we are good at is who's behind the crypto, like who developed it, who the people that buy it, how are they going to feel 1 year from now? Are they going to be happy or sad? What does it do? What does the logo look at? And we've had some success with that. The success, remote viewing is not 100%. You can have good days and bad days. Like I did Klaus Schwab there, and I had a good day where I had a lot of really good data. I had amazing data. The target before that, I had an off day. Sometimes it doesn't work. It's really difficult to use your mind to perceive across space and time is not easy. So we have like 5 good viewers that work with us. And if we put all 5 at a target, at least 2 of us are going to get some good data for you. Are you into cryptos, Sage?
I am actually. I've been trading since 2018, I believe. I got a long going actually right now on Bitcoin. So
I was a hodler, and I just pulled out a lot of money and bought a really nice place in Hawaii, cash. My dream came true. This is a good story. I was doing remote viewing for Dr. Courtney Brown in 2010 to 2015 or 2016. And I did some really intense viewings, and a couple of them were pretty good. And somebody got a hold of me that said, you're pretty good. You've learned a good skill. You should be careful with that. Like you got to be careful. Some stuff you can put out and some you can't. And so he started kind of mentoring me and said, you know, Dick, people with your skill throughout history have been taken care of. You can be, you should be able to live a comfortable life and not worry about where you live and how much money you have. He said, your creature comforts should be taken care of. You should be free to, he said, you've self illuminated. You've gotten yourself into a level of humanity that's high enough where you shouldn't have to worry. You should be able to take your time and have the freedom to do what you want to do. And he said, here's here's the key. We're in the transition to a new financial system. The old system is going to go away, and all the money is going to go into digital blockchain technology. If you learn about that and buy some Bitcoin for you and your wife and learn about a couple of others, you'll be very happy and very comfortable. So I said, okay, because I knew that this guy knew what he was talking about. So I didn't know any 2017, I knew nothing about. I'd heard of Bitcoin, but I didn't know anything about it. So I'm looking up YouTube and I'm going, man, there's a lot. What the hell is this about? And there's just like, so I learned it and studied it. And there came a day when I took my life savings out and I put it in cryptos using my remote viewing intuition. And it worked out.
That was a good bet.
And it's not too late. So keep going.
What
You
year was that?
That was 2018 I started buying in. There was a day when I called my broker, the guy handling my 401k. So I was old, I was retired, and I had worked a pretty good job. So I had some money saved up. But to take all that out in one, because you're so invested in the old system, like Charles Schwab, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, like the stock market, your 401k, mutual funds, and somebody says, "Oh, that's going to just go
It's
away,
gonna
man.
go away.
It's going to be the biggest wealth transfer in history. Get crypto." So I bought a little crypto, and then one day I said, "I'm going to short the system," and it worked out. It worked out.
And it makes sense too, because from all that I've learned about Bitcoin, it's one of those things where eventually the supply will run out. So
Yeah,
whether our current system fails or not, regardless, Bitcoin will continue to go up over a certain amount of time,
yeah,
and all these very wealthy individuals have been buying it for such a long time. I mean, BlackRock has been buying it. The Winklevoss twins have been buying it. There's the ETF that was recently approved this year. Like these people, they have some of the smartest people
I'm told
working
the
there.
U.S. government is buying Bitcoin.
Yeah, the U.S. government. So it's like people got to get with the program and understand it. Like throughout history, all of those monetary systems have failed. All of the ones throughout history have failed, and the U.S. dollar won't be any different. So naturally, it makes sense that we will go in the direction of cryptographic currency and have things on a blockchain. The blockchain promotes transparency as well. So that's one of the things that I love about it is that it promotes transparency. We can see who's doing what on the blockchain. Imagining a government that's on the blockchain and we can see where your tax dollars are going on the blockchain is like, oh, okay, it's going here, it's doing that, and it's actually verifiable. That's amazing to me.
Yep.
And
Everything is going to be tokenized. We
yeah,
are going into a time when it's going to be the Internet of Things, and every transaction will be tokenized and it will be monitored. And some won't like this, the surveillance aspect, but it's going to be monitored, predicted, and transacted in real time. So you're going to be paying your taxes, but it'll be at the point of transmission.
right.
And I have a little gold and silver, but we're not going back to governments aren't going to settle debts and corporations aren't going to be exchanging hunks of metal. They're going to
Yeah,
be doing it digitally. It's going to be blockchain. So
exactly.
it's you know I'm told now if you have a quarter of a Bitcoin, you'll be wealthy in a few years. So yeah.
Yeah, and I
You
buy
like
Bitcoin every
you like
month.
Theta? You like H bar, Hedera hash graph? You do?
I've learned about HBAR. HBAR also has they have the one where you can install the thing in your home, right? And it has like they have like a node system where you can. Is that the one? Is that HBAR?
I think
I
that's Theta, maybe. Yes, that's Theta. But H bar is, well, there's a lot to learn, and H bar has developers that are really smart that are they're planning years in advance. The people that run this world, they think a century in advance. We remote viewed Satoshi Nakamoto, Daz Smith, and I, and we didn't get a Japanese guy. We got a think tank like the Rand Corporation and generational university foundations behind it. So they they knew that they were going to use blockchain as the next accounting system, and they just needed computers to come to the point where we had like handheld computers that can do the transactions. So the time is now, and we're going into that. Yeah.
Speaking of the future, what does that look like? The audience always loves to know about like where are we going, the next 10, 20 years? Like besides our monetary system changing, like what does the next steps for humanity look like? Will humans evolve into something different?
Yes, humans are going to be very different. Um, we are we've been in a administration that is based on nation states, and nation states were created as an administration tool where you get people to group together. They have a common currency, they have a common national anthem, they have common foods, common tastes, but they group together and they have patriotism, and it's a good administrative tool. You look at who is behind all that, it would be the creators of this place, and that goes back to Greek mythology. Mythology is actually a way to encapsulate information to pass it from one civilization to the next, and there have been a number of civilizations here. So I would ask you, why does the United States have the statue of the war goddess Athena in New York Harbor? We call it the Statue of Liberty, but it's really the statue to Athena, the war goddess. Why does the United Kingdom, Great Britain, why do they have a statue of Athena, the war goddess, out in front of Buckingham Palace? Well, if you look, they call it Britannia, but it's the same goddess holding the same symbols. And that goes back to the times of Greek gods. So that's a history lesson which could take years to explain, and I'm doing it in 1 minute. But where we're going is to a point where nation states are no longer needed. Nation states are going to fail, and the dollar empire has had its run. It was designed to last about 100 years, and it's been a little over 100 years. So de-dollarization is coming. Brazil, Russia, China, India, all the BRICS countries, they don't want anything to do with the dollar anymore. And if they don't use it, the dollar fails. They're going to a distributed ledger. So we're going to a time where humans are going to lose faith in every institution. They're going to lose faith in the legal system. They're going to lose faith in the financial system. They're going to lose faith in religions. They're going to lose faith in government. They're going to lose faith in science. And they're going to be adrift. And something new will form where people will congregate as what we call cellular automatons on the Internet of Things. There will be more open communication with other civilizations, ET civilizations. Our knowledge of how we got here and what we are will change. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a traumatic upheaval, but what comes out the other side is going to be very, very interesting. And that's the type of thing we talk about at futureforecastinggroup.com. Is we have some really good sources that understand this and have helped to guide it in the past. and we have really interesting, like 2-hour conversations. I would suggest go get a membership at the visionary level and just listen to our founders' conversations, and you can get an idea of what I've been talking about here. But interesting times.
Absolutely interesting. Yeah, that all sounds pretty much what I've heard as well. Because I've also had on another remote viewer, Stephen Schwartz, and he mentioned that he had an aggregation of different data of different points in the future where it seems like there's going to be some changes, and that people will kind of go back to like a minimalistic lifestyle or
Yeah.
something like that because of
Yeah. There's one thing that's constant is change, and change is coming. I mean, anybody that's paying attention can see that things are coming unraveled. Things are going to change. There's no way that we're going to continue on the trajectory we're on. With the U.S. debt is 35 trillion now, 34 or 30. It's, you can't even keep up with it. Like every 100
yeah,
days, another trillion. It's unsustainable. They can't even pay the interest on it.
yeah.
People are losing faith in the government. Blockchain is coming. You're not going to stop blockchain. You're not going to, I see people say, use cash, man. Don't give up cash. They don't use their countries. China, they don't use cash. Great Britain, one of our remote viewers, he goes, he hasn't used cash since COVID. Doesn't
Yeah,
touch it. Yeah.
yeah. So so for people who've heard this and they're thinking about the future now, what are the steps that you would advise them on what to do? I mean, obviously this is not a financial advice or medical
Yeah.
advice or whatever type of advice.
Yeah. Don't take advice from me. I'm an old reporter, and I'm an eccentric old guy now. I'm an eccentric crypto millionaire. I'll say that. But I would say you need to learn about blockchain,
Okay.
and you need to embrace AI. Now, AI is something we've got a guy that works with us that's learning AI for us, but that's just coming. Uh, there's a great analogy, and that is the folds of the paper. Like, have you heard this one? If you have a piece of paper that's like how many microns thick? I mean, it's very, very not thick. This is exponential technology. I'm explaining. If you fold it over once, it's still like microns thick, right? And you fold it again, it, and it gets maybe a little thicker. If you fold it, if you were able to fold it 42 times, it would reach the moon. And technology with AI is going that exponentially. So we are going to see technology that is akin to magic, and everything is going blockchain. I would learn that. I would get a foot in the door of cryptocurrency. That is my best, not financial advice. If you have any, you know, learn about it and get some, because it's a way to be comfortable in the transition to the new system. Yeah.
Are there any geographical changes that people should be aware of? Like, I know we have like those rising sea levels and stuff. Should people kind of be wary of that in the next 20 years or something?
The Earth is, this is complex. The we think of the solar system as a plate with the sun in the middle, and then the planets spinning in a static circular orbit. In reality, the sun is here, and the planets are trailing behind it in a spiral. So here's the sun, and you'll appreciate the sun because you're praise the sun. I was going to ask about that, but the sun is the central point of our solar system, which is moving through the galaxy at a really fast clip. And it's going through an arm of the galaxy where the energy is compressed and different energies are hitting it, and it affects the orbits, and it affects the energetic interaction between the planets. So you're going to see some upheavals geographically, and we're starting to see that: fires, hurricanes. And I'm not talking about man-made global warming. I'm talking about things that are affecting the whole solar system. This comes in cycles. The Earth is 4 billion years old. There have been other civilizations before us, at least six that we know of, and it's we're coming to a time where, yeah, there will be upheaval. There will be more fires, more floods, more tsunamis, more extreme weather. We might have if you look at David, I think it's David Devine, Adapt 2030, he's talking about the big freeze that's coming. So something's coming, and most people can feel it. A lot of people can sense something's coming. So I'm not really an expert at predicting all that. We look at some of that with our remote viewing, and we do see big issues coming up over the horizon. Yeah.
Have any of the remote viewers seen how our society would change with ETs? Because you mentioned that earlier, like, well, we have like a civilization that's we have ETs here on the planet. We're like working together, maybe even breeding together, or like, will that? Do you guys
Well,
see anything?
probably that's already happened, and we don't know about it.
Yeah.
Um, someone someone created us. The way I was told, it's like, the parable of the Garden of Eden. Well, there was a guardian, and there were certain dens. There was A den, B den, C den, and the one that took hold and became our civilization was E den, the Eden. So there was a guardian, the garden of Eden. And that's the story that we were told. But somebody created this place, somebody created us, somebody administers the whole thing. And I think they're about to wipe the board clean and start a new game. That's my gut feeling. But yeah,
Awesome.
it will be. Look, this universe is teeming with life. This galaxy is teeming with life. There's life all out there. The one thing that, why would there be so many UFOs and they don't tell us about it? Because maybe those created us and this is a game they're playing. This is an experiment. And it's like, okay, just create it and watch it and harvest the energy and let it happen, but don't interact with it on a public basis.
I could talk about that all day, but we're winding down, and I gotta ask my last two questions. So, what is your definition of love?
Oh, love. That's a great. How would I define love? I know what love is. Love is the emotion a parent feels for a child. Love is what I feel for my wife. Um, what love is to me is having a soulmate, a companion that when you have a bad day, they care about it and they'll make it better. So, love is of all the emotions, it's the best one. It's the best one to express and the best one to hold on to. Yeah.
I
The
love
opposite
that.
of hate. But see, you need both poles. There's a polarity. So you need hate and love. Like my wife says, you can't always have the beautiful view. Like sometimes you've got to be in the valley to appreciate the mountaintop. So
Exactly.
if
Yes.
you experience hate, it makes love so much better.
So
Good
much
question.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we need the darkness to see how beautiful the light is.
Yeah.
And speaking of the light, what does the sun represent to you?
The sun may be uh, the God force. The and I was going to ask you about this because on Christmas, what we're really celebrating, well, Jesus would be Jesus, the God Zeus. It would be Jesus, Jesus. And the celebration of Christmas, the coming of the Son of God, is what happens on December 21st is the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky and then it's reborn on the 25th. It starts coming back. So the sun is the light. It's the primal force. It's the source of all our energy, and life is energy. So yeah, we could talk about that for a whole program.
Yeah, we absolutely could. You said you were going to ask me what was my thoughts about the sun, or
Yeah, why do you call your program Praise the Sun?
yeah. So, praise the sun came about because it's well there's a few different things. Like if you were to look up praise the sun on YouTube, there one of them comes from a game called Dark Souls, in which there's a person named Solar or something like that, and he does this thing where it's like praise the sun, and he's like kind of like this medieval person who like worships the sun. But for me, praise the sun has kind of just been, I guess, when you look up into space, it reminds you that there's something much more than what you're experiencing here. It's
Mhm.
something divine, it's something godly, it's something amazing. And the sun has been here for as long as everyone can remember. It's been here for your parents, for your grandparents, for their parents. It's seen everything. So to me, praise the sun because it gives life for this planet, for all of the experiences that we have, for that my children will have, my children's children will have, continuing on. So without it, we wouldn't be having any of these experiences. So that's why I
When
say
you
praise the sun.
when you pass on, supposedly you go to the light. So
Right.
is that where you're going?
Yeah. The light is also the great central sun as well, the great
Yeah,
divine light. So to me, the sun is kind of like an extension of God. Perhaps it's its heart or something, like, or one of its hearts, or whatever. Because I think the from my personal connection with God is just, I think it's just it's everything. It wouldn't, to me, it's not like a deity, a human being in the sky. When I think of God, I think of all that is, like
yep,
everything,
the
because
everything.
the
Yeah,
everything. Because I think personally, I think everything is consciousness, even all matter that's around us. It's just consciousness existing in different
yep. That's the
expressions.
basis of remote viewing right there. That's what I explained. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the the one thing that may be hard for people to accept is that there is this God, there is the all that created all of this.
Right.
Um, that is the great creator, but within this creation, there are people think that human beings are the ultimate sentient being
Yeah.
in the solar system, and that may not be the case.
Right.
There are probably you know, other beings. So, hey, Sage, I really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. You really need to come to Hawaii, and I'll take you to dinner. You let me know when you come out,
And
and
it's
we'll spend
yeah,
some good time together. Yeah, you're a good
absolutely.
soul. I like you. So we'll talk again.
Thank you so much for your time, Dick. I really appreciate it. It has been an amazing conversation. I hope it's been insightful for the audience. Where can people find out more about you before you go? I know you've said it a few times,
Yeah,
but
futureforecasters.com. We have two sites. One is the portal entries, Future Forecasters, or futureforecastinggroup.com. Yeah, just try a membership for a month at the visionary level and hear that we have some people that talk to us that wouldn't come on this show, that can't talk in public. Like they're so
mhm.
knowledgeable and so on the inside that that sounds like a cop out, like a promotional thing. But seriously, we have some amazing information. And go cryptos. You're gonna be wealthy someday with that Bitcoin you have. So keep buying it as you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
Thank you so
right.
much.
Aloha from Hawaii. It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you want to contact Dick, his information will be in the description box below. Everyone, take care. Praise the sun.